Here we go. Stromquist. Welcome to Control Talk Now, your smart buildings video cast and podcast for the week ending June 17th, 2018. This is episode 271, where we talk about whatever the heck we want to talk about, but mainly smart controls. I am joined, as usual, by the man, the myth, the legend, the one, the only Las Vegas tested Kenny Smyers.
Yeah.
Control man from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Kenny, man. What a week we had last week.
We sure did, Eric. We were out there in Las Vegas at the Realcomm IvyCon, and these are some of the old school magazines that they gave out that I find very, very, I like the getting the conference issues and the hard copies. You and I talked about that once before.
You're an analog type guy.
Yeah, well, how about that book? Have you making progress on that? The 3 Score and More book that I got for your birthday?
Dude. Yeah, Kenny sent that to me because I got a year older and he's trying to keep me healthy. Dude,
well,
I tell you
the
what,
whole idea is it's mentality, age and time. I can't believe these are constructs that, they were created out of necessity. The Northwest, East, the South and North Hemisphere. I mean, it's all arbitrary. It was all decided by the English back when that, we're in the North Hemisphere and everybody else is in the South Hemisphere sort of thing.
Well, I'm kind of with the belief, the Germanic belief, which is if you want to stay healthy, man, just wine and whiskey, right? Wine, whiskey, and women.
There you go. The 3 W's.
3 W's, right? That'll keep you young, won't it?
Well, sometimes at the right time, it's the right call, but sometimes it's the wrong call. Anyhow, but yeah, it was a really great week. It was exciting because there was a lot of travel involved. There's a lot of movement. The fluidity of the industry it's increased. We're seeing. We talked about time to market. We talked about collaboration. We talked about competition. We talk about all these great terms, but we got to see that firsthand. And the difference between 2017 and 2018 were enormous.
Well, they were. And of course, the conference theme, as you know, Kenny, is the age of acceleration. And I tell you what, man, I think all the things we've been talking about sort of got summed up, and all those things are accelerating at a very, very, very fast pace. And, as we've said many times on this show, it's not that those of us who've been around the industry for a while haven't seen change before, because we all have. Just we haven't seen it at the rate that it's coming at. It's just fast.
Well, yeah, and then the whole idea of acquisitions and what that does to the world that we live in, the stability. We've seen 5 acquisitions in the last 2 years, not even 2 years, almost 2 years, and they've been very impacting in terms of the way we do business, from the building automation, building management, your smart parts. Smarts and parts style of business is evolving into a solution style. Still what resounds in my mind is the thing at KMC Commander meeting. We had that partner meeting said that, we're going to be 95% managed services and 5% hardware. So software and managed services are becoming more and more the staple that we have to, learn more about and actually put to use. And so we're seeing some great products, though. We have 1 or 2 good posts today about products, one being sunsetted and mothballed or put off of the market, and one being introduced. And it's so fun to see how this never stops. And I think we're getting at scale. It used to be some of these great solutions were only available at a very, very large, high price ticket, offering, right, versus now you can actually start with something small, get that technology immediately, and then use the money you save from the technology, so you get immediate return on investment, but also that when people are enriched by that technology, they tend to like it and want more of it. So it's like a barrier. But once you get over that first technological barrier where people are kind of, don't want to see their cheese moved across the board, or they don't want to move laterally to another part of the board where you're learning something that marries up with your existing strengths and technologies and takes you to another market. So we're seeing that, a lot of guides.
I want to comment on that, Kenny, because I think it's a really good point. And I think the question you sort of have to ask yourself, and I think, we're sort of at an intersection technology wise. In other words, I think a lot of it came from home and buildings. A lot of it came from, IoT, this whole internet of things. But I think that the challenge that a lot of people are having right now is that if you were going to start from scratch right now today, would you build the existing controls and systems and stuff that we have? And I think the answer for a lot of people is probably not. But you have legacy products that you have to take into account, and you definitely have to do that. I mean, I think that's one of the things that you can count on if you go with a Honeywell, a Johnson's, or a Siemens, or one of the stalwarts like that is, they're going to be backwards compatible, and they're going to make sure that their stuff works. But I think now we're seeing a lot of these newcomers that are coming into the game that are just starting from scratch and building what I think everybody would build today if they had the opportunity to do it. Now, can they be sustainable? And are they still going to be around in 5, 10, 15 years is the big questions, right? So like I said, when I get, and I think this gets back to the role of distributors, right? I mean, I think distributors can be your guides with that. This is why I think it's very important whether you're dealing with a distributor or a master systems integrators that they're well-versed in multiple products. And what I mean by that, Kenny, is it used to be when, I would be out talking to a client or a customer, they would say, what do you do? I said, well, I'm the Honeywell guy. I'm the Johnson guy, right? And then, the game was always, well, why is that better than everything else in the field? And everything else was pretty much the same, right? So it sort of, got down to you selling your services or whatever, or escalated down to price or whatever the case may be. But now the conversation is, right? I meet a client and they say, what do you handle? I say, I handle multiple brands. Well, really, tell me about that. Well, look, it depends on what you want to do. Right? I mean, if you're pretty risk averse, right, you can go with a Honeywell, Johnson, Siemens, and you know what, you're going to get good technology, and those companies are going to be around and they're going to take care of you, right? You might pay a little bit more for them, and you might not get the latest technology. I mean, although a lot of times you do, but if you're not risk averse, we could put you on with somebody else. We could put together a hybrid system with the best of breed of all these different companies. Now, your risk there is, they might not be around in 5 or 10 years. So that, that's
the technology will be around. What I think more so is versions of tech. In other words, you hit the nail on the head. It used to be very vendor specific. You were either red, blue, green, yellow, and all the different colors of the flag that represented the major vendors, major manufacturers. Right. And so you were vendor specific. Now what we're seeing is you're getting technology specific. So if you want the advantages of certain technologies, you've got to go in a different direction and not rely on solely that all that technology, the newest technology coming from that particular vendor from the old days. So what you're seeing is, like you said, the hybrids. Because we saw, just to sum it up, kind of like the smart buildings need smarter cybersecurity. So cybersecurity now has entered the equation, and so you need cybersecurity technology that may or may not be introduced with the vendor of choice that you've had over the year, or your legacy system. You might need to go get another partner to get your cybersecurity requirements. The data. So when now we're talking about data, the connected data, and we have data at the edge, data at the fog, and then data at the cloud. So you need somebody to manage your data and provide you analytics. And we're seeing some of the vendors are providing very analytic centric software. Or graphic software and dashboard software, but you've got a major vendor out there that's putting them all together in a very usable, scalable, front end, and then you see some acquisitions that now are marrying up technologies that perhaps that manufacturer would have not gotten to unless they made that acquisition for many years. So when you see all these things happening for a facility manager or for somebody that's trying to steer a steady course, protect their legacy investments. And then manage change and then future-proof for building, you've really got some serious technologies to look at, review, and put into the early
right.
So
right. Well, you said something, Kenny, too, that I think bears sort of flushing out a little bit. You said you look for your partners to help you, and I think there's got to be a huge distinction now, especially today with all those choices and all those things between a vendor and a partner. I say you don't want to have a vendor. Because of and you want to have a partner, you want to have somebody that's going to look after your best interests. So this whole sort of Amazon effect we're seeing, where people are cutting guys like me and you out for 2 or 3 cents because it gets, that's got to change. If you want to truly have, your systems where your legacy system can interact with the newer technologies, you got to have somebody who's looking after your interest. And the only way you can have that is you have to think of people as partners versus just vendors. And the rules before of, well, I'm going to pit you against this person and low price wins. That's penny wise and pound foolish, more so now than ever. So, check your people that you're dealing with, make sure they're going to be partners. And it goes both ways, by the way. If you're an end user, you better check the references on your distributor and also on your systems integrator and make sure that they're not just playing win-lose game, that they're not just trying to make the most money off of you that they possibly can and walk away. So
yeah, one off here, but like you said earlier, in the partners, so we had trusted advisors, but all these names are coming up. I remember back in the old days, I remember the favorite thing when you did from, subject to, reference, and POC, point of contact. Who was your point of contact? So that was your throat to choke, and then we've seen some great panels and we had some great interviews with people like Ed Merwin, where they said, technology, a large user from the MUSH market, municipalities, university, schools, and hospitals, they need somebody out there who's a technology filterer. They filter the technologies and steer the ones that don't apply to their particular application away so they don't take time and energy off anybody's table. But the filtering process requires a lot of investments of time, attendance, like even to the meeting that we were at with Realcomm, the Realcomm IBCon was literally a fire hose of extraordinary amounts of technology that are presently available or at varying stages of availability. Some were being introduced at the show, some are in their mature years, but people that are they have to stay local because they just don't have the manpower or they don't have the resources to go to all these things. They need to access a particular thing. And I think that's one of the best things that Control Trends has done for our industry is we've served as that focal point. We've taken a lot of, probably, technology that doesn't have an immediate relevancy to this technology that we talked about yesterday and the technology we talk about tomorrow, but it's the technologies that are affecting our industry. And we try to put them into trends, which one of these technologies creates a trend that we follow and basically create categories of, and then we monitor the interest of them. But the filtering problems that you have with too much.
But hang on a second, Kenny. I think that the technology filter, that can be done at different levels. We got certain master systems integrators that are good at, but I think the distributor really can become one of the most important parts in the chain if they make that investment. And I was really pleased to see more distributors out at Realcomm IBCon this year, because when we first started going, it was me and you, some contractors and a bunch of end users and a bunch of vendors. So I think the distributors, have got to step up to the plate because it is a tremendous amount of time and investment sort of sorting through it. And I'm not saying the distributors are always going to have the right answer, but they can at least help you make an informed decision.
Right, but then the distributor is going to come back and tell you when we go to the distributor meetings that we attend, hey, that sounds great, and everybody, it's like never graduating from college, because you keep taking another interesting course, so you can't pick your major and you never graduate, so professional students don't make much money. So you got to generate revenue. And see, the hard part is to take what we're asking people to recognize and creating a model, a revenue model. So how do you charge? So if you spend your time, you attend all these things, and then how do you add that? How do you charge for that value added that you provide in terms of being the Marco Polo of the industry, or for your territory? Because we're now trying to figure out ways of how to disseminate technology. Sometimes, it's instead of us going to, 30 times in a week or a month to visit this many companies, we hold one general session, bring all those companies to that local presentation, and everybody's enriched, because that seems to be much more efficient and people prefer that, and if you could throw on, something like continuing education or CEU, so that they get a certificate of attendance that they can go to some sort of qualification. So we're seeing a lot of this stuff happen, but and another thing cool is that we saw a whole bunch of commotion on how to bring more people, attract more young people into our industry. How we getting a federal designation for our career field, AFSC, what is our specialty code? If you're filling out a federal form and it says, what do you do professionally? There is no professional number for a federal form that says you are a building automation specialist or a building management specialist. You might be a contractor, electrical contractor, but they don't have a building controls contractor. So we saw a gentleman out there at Realcomm IBCon that was really, truly fleshing out what we do for a living and putting that job description, job profile into a category that would be recognized across the federal government.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that was
Brian is
incredible.
rocking and rolling, man.
Yeah.
He's awesome with that. Well, Kenny, look, so much good stuff happening out there. We got our first guest teed up and ready to go. So how about introducing him?
I'd love to, Eric. It's the one and only Ken St. Clair, the owner-editor of AutomatedBuildings.com, and he's recently returned from a European excursion. He's got a lot of great news and information to bring back home, or to North America, I guess. Welcome to the show, Ken.
Welcome to the show, Kenny. Ken, Auto.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you very much. Always great to be here.
Yeah. So Helsinki, we noticed you seem to put the emphasis on the hell there. So tell us about your trip and where you've been.
Actually, it's a beautiful city. Very easy to get around. Very focused on public transport. You just come out of the airport and get on a train, and you appear down in the train station downtown, and walk to the hotel. And so very European. Very great. Nice and green. Yeah, it was a real good experience.
Yeah. Great.
And so you were over there vacationing, fishing, eating herring, or
Sailing.
What were you
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we were part of the Nordic building, smart building event, and it was very neat. It was small in comparison to what I was missing in Vegas, and maybe you guys can chat a little bit about that later and get me up to date on what I missed. We're probably under 200 at it, but it was very intense. It actually reminded me of the early days of Project Haystack, and just a room full of folks, but everybody's so passionate. And this is kind of an interesting movement. It's this whole people-powered building movement, and the folks were speaking to that. So yeah, a lot of good stuff. One of the big things that hit me on the head was is not so much about the building automation. It's just how the whole building process is broke. We basically have these developers that build buildings for profit in cities with restrictions. So they build as much building as they can within the lot to the heights they can, and then we try to move people into them and make them happy. The Europeans have figured out that that's broken, and it's got to get fixed. And they have some pretty unique ideas of how to do that. So that was kind of interesting, sort of a sideline.
Yeah, let's talk about a couple of those ideas, Ken.
Well, can I ask you a question real quick? Do they do it the way we do it with the set, with the division 25, 26, 27? I mean, do they have that disparate, silo approach, or how? I mean, I don't want to digress. I just want to, because I'm biting curiosity.
Yeah, I can't speak to that because I wasn't down to that detail. We were more at the conceptual level, and I think that's the interesting part. Is that's where the problem is that conceptually it just doesn't work. They're somewhat better off in the fact that they have a lot of large companies, and the large companies are very people driven. They're all basically competing for good talent, and so they want their buildings to be the best buildings. So they're much like our software campuses. So they basically work really hard to try and come up with the best solution they can. But the problem is that whole construction process just gets in the way. So they got some really interesting ideas. One is that the people actually provide what they call it, crowd lending. I thought that was an interesting term. I'd never even heard of that before. So the contractor is basically controlled by the people of the city. It's some interesting concepts there anyway. But of course, for us, I think the bulk of what we've all got to do is retrofit. So we have what we have, and we just have to figure out the best way of making it people powered. But the problem is that we're still doing new construction that way. We're still building these awful buildings, and then we retrofit them and try and figure out how we can make them a little more people orientated. And of course, their idea of how all this works is so completely different. I mean, they're backing away from the concrete jungles, and the cars are virtually not allowed downtown, and it's bikes, walking, and rapid transit comes right into the building and out, and so that's all their infrastructure is kind of built in there. So it's kind of a real head shake to see how that all is going on.
Very cool. I lived in Germany for a while, 9 years, and I also had that. They do things very efficiently. Everything's
Yeah.
built like efficiently. So transportation, I mean, everything from the little towns to the bigger towns to the outside the cities, everything's connected. So you don't really need a vehicle. You can actually survive quite well and comfortably not owning a vehicle. So that I was impressed with that. The some of the breakouts and whatever, you said it was like Project Haystack a little bit, and so you had a lot of really smart people in a room. How did they begin the discussion? Was there like scenarios where they talked about case studies, or did they? I mean, what was the kind of the format?
There was a lot of. It was approached at a lot of levels. It was approached at the construction level. This new term is slipping into our world. Mark wrote a article on it in our June issue on property tech, and like this is who we are now. Is we're property tech. All of these technologies we're using are there for the purpose of enhancing our properties, and they actually had a separate section which, ironically enough, I spoke at because. So I guess we definitely are part of the property tech, and they were interested in some of the stuff that we were saying, and this whole humanization of the digital inclusion, those kinds of words. So that was an interesting side piece as well. So even though it was a relatively small conference, it actually had two sections going on in a couple areas simultaneously. So I had to move back and forth, but that was good. It covered a broad range. Sorry?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Tell us what you spoke about. Tell us about your talk.
Yeah, okay. Actually, if I can share my screen with you, I can get rid of my ugly face here, and we can.
That sounds like a plan. And and while you were doing that, Ken and I were at Realcomm IBCon, so it'd be interesting to see what we were talking about versus what you were talking about. It sounds like Kenny, there were some similar things, huh?
Well, it's like I love these new terms, and again, this is always an incredibly learning. The learning experience is always fun, and it's important because we get to compare and contrast the way we do things versus what they do and their problems too. But the building process being flawed is really remarkable to me. That's
a universal problem. It seems like.
Yeah.
All right, Ken, your screen's up, buddy. So tell us what you got here.
Okay, well, this was one of the presenters. This is Dr. Lawrence from the UK, and he's basically working in I find a very interesting area. He's working in the area of just how does all this digital stuff fit together, and how can we keep it from driving us crazy? And he did a great job of that, and we're looking forward to doing some more stuff with him and introducing him more to the industry. But that was a great preamble for the session that I had, which was next here, I think. And so we did this transparency in the digital twin and what it means to be seen. And it was an interesting discussion. And I got to admit, I got blindsided when the gentleman, not sure how you say his name there, Jussie, he basically presented how he was using BIM to basically deal with the people in the building. And I was aghast. BIM, of course, is an amazing digital twin for the physical building, but I akined it to almost driving thumbtacks with a sledgehammer through the hearts of the people in the building. I don't think it's that tool. And so there was a lot of talk at the conference about I love this term too, platforms of trust, and basically the idea of a platform that we could start uploading a lot of this social side of the building. And so it's just a lot of moving pieces. It wasn't so much that we were coming up to any conclusions. We were all just sharing. There was an underlying thing that was kind of unusual to me, is they kept asking the question, which we never ask, is, do we really need to do this with technology? I think as North Americans, we always say, well, I don't know, there's got to be an app for that. So it's kind of a funny thing as well. So anyway, that was kind of interesting. So
well, Ken, real quick, is one of my teachers, Marshall Thurber, used to tell me all the time, you got to make sure you have stable datum, which means everybody understands the terms. And, you know, we talk a lot about digital twins for some of our listeners out here who might not know what that means and why it's important. How about just running them through that real quick?
Actually, the easiest way I describe it is I use a digital twin to create automated buildings, and you use a digital twin to create control trends. You basically have something on your laptop, and Ken taps in some of those amazing words he writes, and he reads them over a couple of times, and when he's happy with them, then he pushes a button and the digital twin becomes reality.
Nice.
I think that's the easiest definition of it. It obviously can get more complex in the fact of a BIM model. It has all of the bits and pieces of the building, and it is just a huge digital twin. So there's agile digital twins, and there's huge, heavy digital twins. And I think and it's not uncommon to have several digital twins for a purpose, because they'll each have a different purpose.
Right. So now, I mean, it seems like if I'm looking at this slide correctly, then transparency in the digital twin, I mean, could there be some abuses with the digital twin? Is that sort of where the conversation went a little bit here?
Well, I think the problem here, what I see is that definition of the digital twin is what we're talking about, because we're moving into a virtual digital. Well, they all are virtual, but it's the digital twin is starting to evolve into a dynamic as we start to put in social feelings, social locations, information. Then that starts to add some complications to that, and it certainly points that it's not really something you're going to do with a BIM model. You're going to have a platform of trust. I love that. Yeah. Anyway,
Ken, we were at the Realcomm IvyCon, and in the vendor show, we interviewed a couple of folks that were talking about their version of a digital twin, which is very interesting, because I think you're right. A connotative definition seems to be provided by each person's understanding of a digital twin. This one company had basically, using the BIM concept, but they considered a digital twin was a 3D representation, or 4D, so it actually had like the building and the floor, and they could click on it, and it showed, it was like transparent, that it showed where the people were. And, so to me, the digital twin concept to them was that they were actually creating a computer accessed digital version of what their building was, as like you said, represented digitally on their computer. So they could model stuff, they could change stuff, they could move things around to see, essentially what the impact would be, So I don't know, does that meet your version as one of the definitions of digital twin?
I think what it goes back to is what I'm saying is it's very feasible to have several digital twins.
Okay.
So digital triplets.
We can have quadruplets, like they don't have to be just digital twins there. But I think the reference is correct, because what it is you have a digital twin of what you're actually changing in the building. Yeah. And you may have more than one digital twin. You may have a digital twin that is basically focused on occupant's location, and you may have another one that's on emotion and stuff, or maybe you start rolling them together, and it's pretty early days for all of this, so there's not so many.
I dig it. And you had that other slide you sent us about the effective computing can help bridge the gap between apps and human emotions. I mean, this is like, was that high tech, high touch way back in the day, Eric?
John Nesbitt.
And so this seems to me like kind of like a spinoff, but a much deeper, it's going into very deep, the psychologies and the physiologies of people inside of buildings is really getting taken serious. So it's I mean,
yeah. So, Ken, real quick, I want to comment. I mean, Kenny, I really want to comment on that, because I really think that, the thing maybe we forget is that these real estate people are competing against other real estate people for business, right? They're trying to keep their occupancy rates up, their lease rates up. And I think by having a better experience in one building versus another, I think that's a competitive advantage. Would you guys agree or disagree with that? I think we're going to see more of it.
Well, the other thing that's in that competitive piece is that if you develop a good digital twin for a building and it has a track record, then you can very quickly deploy it on the next building.
Yeah. Well,
So
Oh, cool.
I mean, it's a way, the whole way computer.
scalable.
We have to start thinking like software developers. That's this whole thing about the, creating that awesome user experience that the people want to be in that building. It's a whole new way of thinking, and
And
along
who's
with
driving it? Who's driving it, Otto? I mean, it's the millennials, right? They won't tolerate it.
That's right.
Yeah, so they're not going to work in a space that doesn't have a great experience. And I think before it was optional. Now I think it's mandatory. And that was part of, I think, what Kenny and I were picking up at Realcomm Ibicon. I think they're beginning to see it over here too, that they've got to use technology to have a better experience, a high touch experience, as Kenny said.
Well, sure, and then the other thing was the productivity, as we always are kicking up the 330, 300, or the 10, 100, 1000, and somebody said, that's even small scale. It's probably like 800, 8000, with the productivity value. But imagine, so what we're driving here too, not only is the commercial real estate people keep their buildings occupied, but the people inside there are happy and they're much more productive, healthier people, so the philosophy has to occur first, right, Ken Sinclair? That we have to have people understanding what we're trying to achieve, and then let the technology follow and suit, and bring and deliver those goods, right?
Yeah. The other piece I want to talk about is the transparency, and of course that was a lot of discussion was around that, and
well, hang on real quick, Ken. Before you make that thought, I just got to ask a question. Ken mentioned suit. I'm looking at this image of you. Are you wearing a suit? That does not look like the usual outfit you wear. Did you get dressed up for this?
No, it's just a jacket. Yep. I was.
All right. You look very handsome. So I want to comment on the suit.
Oh, there you go.
All right. But anyway, back to transparency. Sorry to interrupt.
You wanted me to be a little more transparent, little less that. Anyway, the whole transparency discussion. Of course, Europe is in the middle of this. Basically, as you may have probably had to modify some of your stuff if you were sending anything to Europe, because they have to, if you're collecting any data from people, now you have to identify what it is you're going to do with the data. And it's basically the start of the loss of the free internet. And we had a lot of discussion off record about that. And it's basically changing how valuable this technology might be. I kind of went thinking that, well, this is all going to roll into these ultimate apps and stuff like that. But what they're pointing out is that this pretty much, it starts to, because of the transparency and the people that are afraid to have their information exposed. We talked about opting in and opting out. We talked about a passport was kind of a neat concept, got kicked around, is that data like people should have passports. And so you should, when you actually sign up for a service, you would actually apply for a passport, and the passport would basically determine what information they gave about that, and it would be just like a digital signature that goes along with it. So some ideas like that. So there's some stuff we have to work out, this whole social side of the internet. I think the whole internet in North America is still pretty Wild West, and I love it. I absolutely love it, and I do not want to ever lose that freedom, because that's what makes us innovative. But they've seen the dark side of it, and they've started to manipulate it. And as soon as you start manipulating it, then it kind of goes crazy. It becomes like a government thing, not a and of course it's not a government. It's basically the whole union of European countries that have bought into this. So I think that was an interesting discussion too. That was pretty interesting.
Well, I know that the Europeans have a whole different philosophy and perspective on the internet itself. When I was doing a project once a while ago, maybe like 3 years ago, they believed that having access to the internet was part of the human rights package. That if you had right to social services and right to government support and health and protection from the border enemies and whatever. Did they have any discussions about internet being free and available to everybody at all times as part of their Bill of Rights, so to speak?
No, I did not hear too much
Okay.
discussion about that, but I did hear a lot of, or basically the internet was amazing, better than here, everywhere, better on cell, better on Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi was pretty much free in airports, train
Right.
stations, and stuff. So yeah,
Yeah, that was part of the purpose. That they believed that the government should provide it to all people, so there would be no discrimination on if you couldn't afford the internet, it would be provided as a
yeah,
service.
to stop the digital divide. Yeah, they're very very socialistic that way to basically include
Right.
the whole community and stuff. So anyway, yeah, that's kind of a different approach is all trial. So sometimes you got so caught up in the culture that it was the discussions were went a little different direction than I had thought. But we just got this article published, so it is not part of the June issue, but and basically what it's all about is it's whoops, that's not it. Okay, but there's the I think it's called Seeking Stackable Semantics, and it basically plays into the new Haystack magazine, and basically provides a little bit of history of Haystack and just that incredible movement that has occurred just in the last little while. I'm finding that that's pretty interesting, that whole Haystack. And we were all involved in it. We got involved in the early days, and it kind of almost seemed like Future Watch or something. And now it's become a reality, and now it's become
It's the standard. Yeah,
it's a standard. Yeah. So what I'm thinking is this humanistic stuff, what I'm talking about, which I'm maybe not so sure, is basically at the same point. We're at that point that we're all starting to talk about it, but once we'll go, once we once we basically pull that together, I think we'll be heading off with a movement sort of like Haystack, that the humanistic digital inclusion will be a part of these buildings, and we'll start to develop some methods of doing that. And so there's a few other things kicking around here I wanted to show you. Optical did a paper on why to use BACnet. That's just out a few days ago too. So this is late breaking news other than our June issue. And then we got this published in Facilities. So my life's getting kind of hectic here, but and I love this graphic because it's starting to take the user experience, which is of course a very soft and fuzzy thing, and turn it into an old analog gauge. And did we achieve?
Well, that's really cool. Because I mean, that's what we need, though. Is the metrics. We need to know, like you said, first we got the ideas and the philosophies, and then how you actually create the experience and implement it, and then measure it. So I think, by the way, the Haystack took off at the Realcomm IBCon. It was one of the big buzzwords. Once Siemens had purchased J2,
yes,
J2 is 100% Haystack. And then, of course, prior to that, you had the Niagara Summit 2018, where Kevin Smith got up in front of an assembly and endorsed, Haystack. So I think that was what we need now, because I think now we're going to see Haystack in those specifications written in by engineers, because you got guys like Donnie Walker that have always been on that accord with that, but now it's very difficult in our area, say in Western Pennsylvania or West Virginia, where they still don't know a whole lot about Haystack. But now we can refer to ASHRAE and say they're adopting it, they're writing it into their standard. We've got Siemens, and J2. We've got big names totally endorsing Haystack. So I think that'll increase the rapidity of its implementation. Ken, I had one question I got circled here twice, because twice I was going to interrupt you and ask you to talk about it. The platform of trust. I mean, we always talked about the integrity economy, because and that basically was punitive. If you did something wrong, it would get around quick, and you would be, you'd be known as a guy, as a bad Bart, so to speak, in the industry. You get away with one time, but so what is a platform of trust?
Well, I think the bigger, or what part of the definition is what is a platform, and what there's going on in the software world now is, if you kind of step back and look at the great big picture, is everybody wants to be the platform. Amazon wants to be the platform. Amazon was there speaking at this conference, talking about where they were going with Echoes, and that was interesting. They closed their presentation by saying, "This is early days. These devices you're seeing aren't the devices that you're going to be using," because the obvious thing is for an Amazon Echo or a Hey Google or whatever is that once you start talking to it, it now has the ability to learn, and so it will in fact become a better device. So we're starting to see that whole side of this coming out as well, which is kind of interesting. What was the question?
The platform of trust. So I understand the platform, and I get that. That makes a lot of sense. That everybody wants to be the platform, and then from there, the trust part. No, so is the trust part a reference to protecting your privacy, or is it a trust part in reference to playing fair in the world? You know, in the economy at large.
I think it's simpler than that. It's what platform does Ken Smyers trust? Because Ken Smyers is my trusted advisor. What we're happening, I think, in simple terms, is we're moving into a world where, I don't know if you've noticed, but stuff's getting kind of complex. And I or you, we can't know everything. So what we do is we farm out big chunks of it to people we trust. And if that's really the only way you can move ahead in today's world. So I trust John Petsy to tell me everything there is to know about Haystack, and I'm also trust Brian Frank. So now I have kind of unloaded all the complications of Haystack because I trust those people, and if they say stuff, then I repeat that. So the trusted platform is, I want to be trusted by you to host your digital twin, your transparency model. I want to have your social interactions of your people. I want to convince you that my platform is secure, safe, those kinds of things.
That's amazing. That's a great concept. I'm glad I asked that question because Eric is a proponent that the distributor's new role, or a growing role, it's always been a role, but is to go out there and invest time and energy learning all these new technologies and kind of filtering them as it applies to a customer. So you know the set of solutions that best fit their particular needs, you know, and it keeps us in the game, kind of being, if you're a distributor, it keeps you in an active role in that trusted advisor position now. You haven't defined that quite that well, but that really makes a lot of sense to me. I mean, that's I love to hear this because that was our intuition, that was our instinctive pursuit, was that we wanted to become trusted advisors in addition to selling components and hardware and software.
Yeah,
and of course, sorry.
I was just going to say, yeah, I think you're right, a TA, and you kind of wonder, you know, we talked about master systems integrators, which we'll get to in a minute, because that was a big topic at ROCOM IBCon. But, you know, Kenny, I'm wondering if almost you have a certification program to become, instead of a distributor, you're a TA, a trusted advisor, right?
Certifications and everything.
A trusted advisor of what, though?
Right. Well, I like the way you did it, though. The trusted advisor, we were talking about Haystack, you know, so I drew a little diagram there, flow chart. Platform of trust, you know, I have Amazon as the example of a platform, but then the trusted advisor, when you talk about, you know, Brian Frank and John Petsy, two stalwarts in the industry that basically led to open, you know, Sedona, you know, they led to, you know, Niagara, you know, the analytic, and the program, the platform of Niagara, and then, you know, and then John Petsy with his work with Sky Foundry and Sky Sparks and analytics, you know, I mean, I think that really was a great, you know, opportunity to explain it. So how do they propose to do that in Europe? I mean, do they have any examples of that yet?
Okay, how are they handling it? They have they're great big construction companies. They're actually famous for sort of worldwide project management, and because of that, they're heavily vested in BIM projects. And so basically, I guess their first platform is BIM, but then they saw that they needed, you know, the ordering side of it, the financial pieces, and so they started building big software identities, and they have some very large software companies there that basically provide platforms of various types for large construction projects. So they feel that they are the poised to create this platform of trust, which I believe is true. But there are all these platforms of trust. I mean, there's the Apple one, there's the Google one, and it's like actually I used for the first time Google Travel, and I'd never used that before. So this is a little app you load up. It goes through and it reads your Google Calendar and all your airplane tickets that you put in there, and it basically turns it all into all of your holidays or your events. Yeah, itinerary, but it's with pictures. Then it goes out and it gets a picture of Helsinki. I click on the picture of Helsinki. It says things to see near you. You click on it. It basically shows me all the things. I click on something I want to see. It basically brings it up and explains it to me, the website. And then I click on it. And if I want to go to it, it says want directions. You click on it. It basically superimposes it on Google Map.
Does it translate for you too?
Yes.
That's
yeah,
cool.
that's for sure. Yeah.
Well,
Well, actually, no, not the street numbers, because
Okay.
I need the street numbers are the street numbers. Like
Sure.
the names that don't fit on the street signs. That's them. they sure have big words.
So it's just an app you get for your phone, then, Ken, or
Yeah, it's just called Google Travel.
wow.
Get that.
It's even better. It's even better than that, Eric. The other thing it does. So I went back and read all of my emails for the last several years, so I can go back and say last time I was at an ASHRAE in Chicago, because sometimes I want that information, and it basically puts them all into these little icon-y things that you can roll through and chronologically organizes them. So it's like a huge. If you ask somebody to do that, it would your secretary or something should be gone for a couple of weeks putting that together, and it's like you load it up and poke. So we're starting to see interaction in these platforms of trust. And I think the other thing that is happening is there is a bit of a fear that that we're all going to be so divided. There'll be the Amazon folks, and there'll be the Google folks, and there'll be the Apple folks, and a few others. So we'll be in about 5 camps or something. So people are trying to look at open platforms that can actually start pulling some of this information together. So it's a whole new world. But it's the hot thing. Everybody wants to be the platform.
Wow, because now you talk about platforms. Our experience, some of the things we had was with Microsoft Azure. We went through the Microsoft Pavilion. And They had 4 Microsoft partners there. They had Honeywell. They had Case Equipment. They had 2 others.
This was at IBCon?
This was at IBCom Realcomm in the vendor
I just want
area.
to confirm that. Okay.
Yeah, so but that was exactly what we felt there too. IBM platform over here.
Yeah, platforms of trust.
Microsoft Azure over here, and don't forget you've got who is that? Samsung's doing their best to
That's a good point. Yeah. So who is Control Trends platform of trust? Like you're going to have to make that decision.
Right now, WordPress. I said right now, WordPress.
WordPress. Okay. Yeah. Well, that's it. Yeah. Like, so as an industry, what is our platform? It's probably an Excel spreadsheet or something like that.
Well, it's a very, very interesting concept when you start thinking about that. So it sounds like you're almost going to have to make a choice unless somebody comes up with that open platform you're talking about that unites Apple and Microsoft and Google together, which would be great. Ken, I wanted to let you know a little secret, man. There was major controversy at the Master Systems Integrators Summit, and your name was mentioned in conjunction with it.
Oh, okay. And
it had to do with the lexicon. It had to do with the word Master Systems Integrator. Kenny, we got to break the news to Ken, because to a man and woman, they said they did not want to be referred to as a Master Systems Integrator. So we need to come up with another word, and I might, which is the integrator of trust.
Yeah, actually, that's
trusted integrator. Yeah. Well, actually, Ken, to Eric's point, there was a breakout where Scott Cochran, who had written and so much about Master Systems Integrators, asked the assembly at the breakout, should we change the name, the reference of Master Systems Integrator? Has it been diluted to the point where it doesn't have its former premiership, where it was the top of the integrator list? Because as soon as you create a name or something, everybody jumps on board and says, that's me too, whatever. And then, so the guys that were the original Master Systems Integrators, but you said something about 4 years ago. I was reading, you talk about reading some of the old emails. I have a little file of Ken St. Clair and some of all the, things that I put so I can find too. I'm not a great sorter of information, but I can do it every once in a while. You were worried that one day these platforms of trust would be so good and provide their services almost free or whatever, and then take it up into the cloud and make you buy it coming back. That we conquered the BACnet protocol and the LAN protocol, all our proprietary protocols, we've found ways to work around them. Niagara's framework, normalized those protocols, and then BACnet became a real BACnet, open BACnet, not proprietary BACnet, and so on. And we were worried about that we did that good job, and now we finally put the data up into the cloud, into one of these big platforms, and guess what? Then they really pull the proprietary punch on you and force you to buy it back. So if you use their service, you have no other choice. Do you see that as a possible outcome?
Yeah, that's a concern, and I guess that's a big piece of the trust is for them to basically describe the terms of your data in their platform. The other thing that came up that's I don't want to not answer that question, but I do want to put something that's interlocking, which is this whole transparency thing. Is how transparent do we want to be? And basically, security of our personal information is starting to push back. And we did a lot of talk at the conference about detecting the presence of people. And we basically had to erase their identity because we're not allowed to collect. We physically can collect way more information than we are legally and people feel comfortable with us doing. So what we have to do is, I think what's happening there is the platform of trust is moving a lot of that information out of the cloud and basically putting it on the edge. And one of the advantages of putting it on the edge is that we can actually do analytics and learning and we can then erase the identity. Let's assume that we got this little door thing, a wink thing that Google bought. So it's sitting on the door. It's got a video camera on it. Well, that's another one I could talk about. It has a video camera on it, and so it recognizes people. So we can recognize the people walking through the door, what their patterns are, what time of day they come, and then we can erase the data of who the person was on the edge. And now we have statistical data created on the edge without identity, and that should make the folks feel a little bit more comfortable. Back actually to video analytics, there was a bit of discussion on that as well. That's getting very sophisticated, and we're actually able to detect at least 4 modes of a person. Are they happy? Are they neutral? Are they upset? Or so basically, by looking at video analytics, we can not only do that of a person, we can actually do that of a crowd.
Wow.
And basically, the police are using this for riot control and stuff like that. How agitated is the crowd? And basically, they're running artificial intelligence on.
Wow.
So anyway, that's pretty common technology now. And of course, where that has also gone is when you're peering in the store window, looking at a digital display. The digital display is looking at you, and it basically profiles you. You got gray hair, so you're probably old, so it's going to not show you skateboards. It's going to show you wheelchairs or something like that. So, wow. All of that stuff is going on. So all of that stuff is coming too. And of course, all of that exists in platforms right now. I mean, once you put that together, you need a platform to connect the edge to the cloud. What's it called? I think they call it
fog.
Fog. Well, there's fog, and actually, what one term I'd never heard was called folk computing, and folk computing is somewhere in the fog. There's something too. So that was an interesting one too. So.
Ken, you brought up three things in a row that are amazingly important, and the experience I had the first time I realized what could happen with data and following, or having this database available and acquiring it. What you could do is it was a security system. It was way before I got into building automation. It was back in Germany. And we had just put in a new access control system in the building, and you had a card read everywhere you went inside the building. So you had a card read to go use the restroom, to go into the cafeteria, to go out the back door, anywhere you went. And security folks took advantage of this information and found out that so-and-so spends over an hour and a half in the bathroom every day. Mm-hmm. And it's so-and-so and so-and-so were leaving the same time at the same door and whatever. And so the council they had at this building was able to go in there and take action to prevent the collection of information that had nothing to do with work or security. And that was back in, I think, 92, and it wasn't even building automation. So I realized the impact that when you collect these things with Wink, how in the hands of the wrong people for the wrong purposes, and like you said, the profiling being done, that seems to dovetail right into the Amazon effect, where artists and writers won't be able to get into the mainstream because they don't sell enough copies or don't have enough following. So by the lack of commercial impact, they're no longer carried in these major stores or these retail outlets because they don't have the commercial clout that the other people do. So that's basically going to become your cup of tea. That's what you're going to get. Your menu of choices will be pared away by the ability to sell large numbers of stuff. So it seems amazing. We have a lot of challenges ahead as a society.
Well, we do. And one challenge we got right away, fellas, is the fact that, and I'm loving this conversation. We're going to need to continue it later on because there's so much good, it's a very, very rich conversation. But I've got a certain number of gigabytes I can put up to YouTube. So we're going to have to begin to wrap this up. I will say, I think we have the opportunity to come up with the Wink stat, which instead of ever having a thermostat on the wall, right, you would just be able to video crowdsource what people look like and know whether they're too hot or too cold. So, grumpy or happy.
Thermal reading.
But so, I think there's so much, but guys, let's continue this conversation, on our next episode. But before we leave, Ken, I'd like to talk a bit about the June edition of AutomatedBuildings.com, what the theme is, and a couple of brief things about that, because we encourage people, as always, to go check you out.
Okay, the title is creating an awesome user experience, and I started writing about that stuff, and I'm not sure I really understood what it was when I started, but I'm kind of getting a little better idea. This user experience it's something like I described with the Google Travel. I showed it to my friend, and he looked at it, and he got it like in 6 seconds. He got what it was doing, and he said, wow, that's neat. Now that's a good user experience, and what we need to do is we need to somehow have that in our buildings, that when you go into a building, flash it up. There we go.
Come here. All right, talking about user experience. Dad's a babysitter today, so
yeah, there you go.
Kids, here's Axel B and Evie G. Say hi to Uncle Kenny and say hi to Uncle Otto.
Hi.
All right, you guys have been great, but we got to finish the show up, okay? So let's listen to Uncle Otto talk, okay? Be very careful and listen to Uncle Otto. Please continue, Ken.
Okay, no, that's pretty much it. I think yeah, I don't know. I lost my point.
Well, Ken, I'll tell you what, it's always a very beneficial time when they get you and sit you down here for a little while, because you convey so much information, and I applaud all the work you do and just sharing that experience, because I really think in a direct and indirect way, the information you're providing has had a constant impact, positive impact on our industry. So, and well done.
Well done, Ken.
Yeah, okay. Actually, there's one thing there is I did want to add is Henry Lawson, which was one of my fellows on the panel. He's just written a paper on wearables, and of course that's another area that haven't even talked about. We can look at people with cameras, we can sense all of this stuff, but once we start moving into the wearables, and basically, I have a regular heartbeat, and I can now see my irregular heartbeat, and all that kind of stuff. So Interesting. Plus, we know whether somebody's exercised. Again, we have a tremendous amount of data about each person individually.
Ken, thank you so much. I got my hands full a little bit here. So thank you very much. We'll catch you next week. Be sure to check out Ken Sinclair's June issue of AutomatedBuildings.com. And then, Ken, man, thanks a lot, buddy.
Okay.
Thanks, Ken.
So, all right, Kenny, well, great stuff from Ken Sinclair as always. And you know what? We got a lot of footage. I mean, gigabytes upon gigabytes upon gigabytes of footage that we got from Realcomm Ibicon. Check out last week's show if you hadn't already. We did a lot of interviews on that to give you a flavor. We talked to a lot of the really, really smart people about some of the things that they saw and learned out there. But we will be posting those over the next couple of weeks. I'll be endeavoring to get those on. But we did have a couple posts this week. So what do you say we hit those, big dog?
Yeah, sure. And again, the one of them was the Dwyer put on a marketing move. They put a nice newsletter each month now, but I was really impressed with the last one that they did, because it got me to take a look at their what they called their airport application, airport automation, where you look at the needs, wants, and solutions for a 24/7 dependability, cost-effective solutions, and security for passengers. And then once, a comfortable environment, clean, purified air, durability, and ease of use, and then solutions. So they provide the products for critical systems management, accurate filter monitoring, and energy efficiency. But I really like to see another vigorous marketing effort, where you see new automation come in, and then you see the presentation. So marketing, as you and I always say, is still how you tell that story and how you differentiate yourself, because everybody's got great products out there, great sensors, great pressure sensors, and then they've also introduced a couple new products that we'll be continuing to feature regarding flow meters, new non-invasive flow metering systems, and some pretty neat stuff coming out of Dwyer.
No, cool stuff from Dwyer. That's great stuff. And Kenny, I tell you what, before I forget, we had a couple of platinum sponsors come on at Realcomm Ibicon. So special shout out to Distech, Acuity Brands. They came on. Ryan, thank you so much, buddy. And I tell you what, those guys definitely know how to do an award show. So the fact that they're in assures us that our time at the Fox Theater is going to be a heck of a lot of fun. And we had a new sponsor come on too. Tell them about that.
Well, we had we just met. And we have Cube, I believe, coming too. So you're right. We're at the we're about a month ahead of last year, and we need to, because the show is evolving and changing. And like you said, this show here in Atlanta, because it's your home base, and because Atlanta has such a formidable group of contractors, engineers, and manufacturers right in the vicinity, and we have a facility that can withstand that kind of Hollywood presence, we're going to have a heck of a show. So, but you have Cube, and we'll be talking more about them. We had a nice post. In fact, that's our next post on Control Trends, was how contractors can, how smart building and HVAC contractors can be more efficient with this Cube product.
Well, yeah, and I think that's another reason to go to some of these shows is, well, you meet these people that have these incredible products that, haven't made mainstream yet, but they will. And I think Hector here, the CEO of Cube, is really going to make some waves here with this product.
Yeah, well, another time, it's another example of a guy starting out as a contractor and evolving into providing a solution that he did for himself, like a homegrown grassroots thing that, all the things that drove him crazy and made his jobs and his projects difficult to track accurately, and get off the dang job and make money, and not throw money away and double, and the duplicities of it. But so what he tells us, Hector Hernandez, he's the CEO of Cube. He tells us about the software and how it saved contractors major dollars by making sure all the data needed to run a successful smart building or HVAC contracting business is in one place and easy to access. And we've seen some great products in that general vicinity. But what happens is this might be a little bit more comprehensive in the fact that it services the higher level systems integrators. In other words, this one aims not as a contractor, with maybe 4 or 5 employees. And so that saves them all the overhead stuff, because it gives them basically templated.
That's where our friend Aaron Gorka has, really, that's his sort of sweet spot, similar type concept, but more for the service HVAC contractor.
Right. This particular software program, was for controls contractors. So they have that, probably they have a lot of gray areas where they've got to track completion, the completion bars that are so critical, to make sure that you're not pulling the horses out of the stables before you got the cart made, and vice versa. So that there's timeliness, and there's 100% participation from all your aspects of your business. So the graphics, the advisor diagrams, it's really cool stuff.
Right. And Hector's being a master systems integrator, I think really has a feel for, what the master systems integrator needs. So we're going to get Hector on the show soon, and he is a cool dude, man. And I tell you what, if you ever get to Miami, look him up, because I tell you what, not only does he provide great graphics, he probably make sure you have a good time in one of my favorite cities, Miami. So. And hey, speaking of Aaron Gorka, man, he's been out, he got married, he's, had his honeymoon, he's back, he's got a couple interviews. So let's hear what Aaron had to say.
Aaron Gorka, young gun for Control Trends, coming back from a honeymoon. In Minneapolis today doing training with Archer Mechanical. I have a young fella here. Why don't you introduce yourself quickly?
Nate Joyce. I am a service tech for Archer and learning about ANT today.
Cool. And, it's good to have the young guns in the room with some of the older guys. How did they do today?
They did good. I was expecting them to do a lot worse, but it's pretty simple to use. It's a good product.
Oh, thank you. I mean, we all work real hard at that. Give a brief about what you learned and how you think it'll make it better, make your job better every day.
Well, no more paper. That's huge. You don't have to go into the shop. You can it's all live. That's nice. The main screen, the dashboard's cool. That's just big boxes you hit. Done. That's good for the old timers.
Cool, man. Well, you know what? I know you got to get back to work, got to get out in the field and make money for everybody. That's what we do out here. So thank you for your time.
Yeah, thanks.
Finished off some training with Minvalco, doing up Archer. We had their techs here. We had one group in the morning, one group in the afternoon. You've heard from the young gun that was in both rooms. Now I'm here with John Heinen. John, why don't you say hello and give him a little bit of feedback on what you found today.
Thanks, Aaron. So I'm John Heinen. I am an outside sales rep here at Minvalco in Minnesota. And we had Archer in for the tech training. We had 2 sessions. Both trainings lasted about, I'd say, 3 hours, maybe even a little less, but they were just kind of playing around with it for a while. And we had, 4 techs, I think, for each session. And it was cool to see them. You could see, it's funny because both sessions would have the same questions, and you have a good game plan with it because you already have the champions in the room, and they're able to, you don't have to necessarily step up and combat these questions. You've got their own employees who know these questions are coming ahead of time, and they just went ahead and, had solid answers for everything that came up, and I feel like by the end of it, they were kind of playing with it on their own. You were able to kind of wander and meander and make sure things are going. They had raised their hand here and there, but for the most part, I feel like they got it. No one walked out of here saying, oh no, here we go. This is something new that's not going to work. They definitely were, they were like, when do we start on this? And we're like, tomorrow. They seemed pretty excited about it.
Which you'd think is kind of rare. I mean, people join the software and adopt it, and they absolutely hate it 98% of the time. So, hats off to the training here, and certainly to Jeff and Shane and Christine, who did an excellent job, Jeremy as well, supporting their team as champions. But what do you think? Do you think they're going to have any challenges, or where do you think they're going to really succeed in all this?
Well, I could see, just like from immediate terms, it's Friday tomorrow, and then the weekend comes. And unless they are getting emergency calls, like the weekend, once you start something like this, you need, I feel like, a couple days to get your daily routine going. And then once you're up and running, you don't really have to worry about it. But there's going to be one day, and it's a Friday, so who knows who's going to be there tomorrow. And then they've got the weekend, so hopefully they can get off to a hot start. And otherwise, there's going to be, anytime you're dealing with a software, there's, who knows, they have iPhones or iPads. Are their iPads going to have a software update, next week or something like that? Or, these are the things that you just kind of work through when you have a, new software program.
and is the future is wide open, and now we got to figure out how to do this over and over again, and find better ways, and add more value in different ways to your customers, I think. John, I think it's time for a beer now, so thank you again, great job, teamwork to success, and until next time, I guess.
Yeah, congratulations on the wedding, and I look forward to working with you.
Cool. And you can find Aaron at anttechnologies.com. Another really cool guy, one of our young guns in our industry. Okay, Kenny, we need to sort of think about wrapping it up here, big dog.
Well, the last post was just an announcement from Honeywell that their W7752G 2000 fan coil unit will be discontinued. This is one of those products that lived a long and prosperous life, but because I would imagine that although it doesn't say there, they're just going to have they're just going to discontinue it, and that's all there is to it. But the interesting thing about those controllers, I think, was their size and their footprint and the particular components that they used for 20 years.
I wonder what they're doing with that one. That was one without reheat on it, and I just wonder if you just could buy the one with reheat and just not use it.
I think that whole series. I think the G series is no longer.
Well, I think they're investing in new products and stuff like that. And it's interesting because, one of the cool things we saw, Kenny, was, the Microsoft Azure platform. We're going to post that interview hopefully next week. You did a great job sort of doing a deep dive into how Microsoft is playing in our industry with Azure. And interestingly enough, one of the vendors there that was using Azure was Honeywell. So I don't know whether that's going to trickle down to our side or not, but I think it does. Microsoft, I think we're getting a little clearer picture of how they might be participating in our industry. And so we'll check that out.
Sounds good.
All right, brother. Well, listen, man, a special thanks to all our guests this week. Ken Sinclair. Thank you, Aaron Gorka, for your great contribution. Kenny, man, I tell you what, I'm still in Vegas time. So let's you and I go get a cold one. Sit back, relax, be bold, stay in control, and stay.
Indeed, Eric.